Feeling a bit indecisive over what to do next in terms of my module storage behind you. So I thought I'd leave it to chance. So I'm obviously not going to make you watch me paint the whole wall. I just thought I'd show you something really funny. This idiot bought paint that's exactly the same colour as the f***ing breeze blocks. The next day. So now I've painted my wall completely the same colour that it was before, and I've got over the anger of doing so. Time to sort out this mess. This is what I really wanted to do, but I knew I had to prioritise something else, so I thought I'd leave it to chance, and then I wouldn't feel guilty about it, but whatever. Let's crack on. So I've sorted what few clamps I've got into different categories. So first off, I've got big, heavy, clampy things. Now I've got these corner clampy things, tiny cute clampy things, pulley clampy things, twisty clampy things. Now I definitely need a space for these because I've got more of these than the others, and I'll probably get some more because they're cheap. These keep coming on offer at Aldi for very cheap, so I'll probably get more of these. So these are the two I want to focus on. Might come up with a spot for my cute little clampy things. These things I've only ever used once and they're pretty useless, so I probably won't bother with those. These things, I don't know. Let's see how we get on. First though, I've got to figure out a way to hold these things onto the wall so that they don't stick out too much from that wall, because I'm the clumsiest person in the world and I will just catch them. Most people would suggest watching a tutorial, seeing what ideas are out there. Not keen on that. I like to just wing it. Let's see what we can do. So the first thing I do is take 5 lengths of pallet wood, all random lengths because that's the look we're going for here. And just like I did with my previous module, I have put some little spaces in between each one just for a bit of a shadow gap. The first French cleat I'm going to attach to the back, and that's going to help me line everything up. So all I'm doing is pre-drilling with a countersunk bit, then I'll just screw straight through and then hang it on the wall and put in my other French cleats, but this time from the face of the pallet board face thing. Facade. I'm going with facade. That sounds about right. After drilling in through the back of the facade, I then take it over to the French cleat wall and then hang it on that top cleat. As you can see, there's still a lot of wiggle and movement, but the more cleats I add to the back of it, the more that's going to disappear. Happy with the way it looks, I then get round to adding the other cleats, and this is really simple. All I do is slide pre-cut cleat behind the board and then just repeat the same process as before, this time countersunk drill bit from the front. I'm not fussed about seeing screw holes and screws here, it's not that kind of wall. Now I am working with dodgy pallet boards. I haven't really done much to them, they're certainly not jointed, but I'm still using those spacers to try and keep things as level as possible as I build my way across the board. So with those spacers in place, I then just pre-drill with a countersunk bit, and then exactly the same process as before, I'm going to put some screws in. The only difference is these screws are going to be on the face of the boards and you will see them, but it won't matter. They're going to be covered with hanging clamps, hopefully. This is the clamp rack I was previously using. I just had some grooves marked into this shelf that I made and the clamps hung on there all right, but it took up a lot of room for very few clamps. So I decided that I would try just hanging the clamps on and seeing how secure that was. So I found a piece of wood that was the same depth as the clamps before the foot of the clamp. Is it a foot? The little plastic bit. And I was relying on that plastic bit sticking out to hold the clamps in place. So I decided to try and get a little bit fancy. Rather than just gluing this to square blocks of wood and attaching that to the board, I tried to do something with angles to make it look a little better. The trouble is, I did this really poorly, and you can't really see it here, but I went to the effort of gluing it all up and there was such an amount of wriggle room that I thought I can't use this. I even tried to use the brad nailer to nail it together, and then I thought about doing some dowels, and I thought, why are you being an idiot? Just do a better job with your joinery and you won't need all this. So after throwing that prototype to one side, and yes, when something doesn't work, you call it a prototype and then nobody thinks you're incompetent. At least that's what I'm going with. So I decided to go for a 45-degree angle on this block of wood I've got. Then I leave a 20mm spacer just to give a bit of extra security, a bit of extra strength. And then after that I need to figure out the width of the piece of wood that I want to slot in there, which is 18mm. So I mark that, then mark another 20mm, and then I do my other 45-degree angle. This will make a bit more sense in a second when you see it. Next up, I've got to figure the depth of this piece, so I need to know exactly how much room behind the block of wood the clamp's going to rest on that foot needs. So I pretty much just eyeball it. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really take any measurements here. And then I drew up all the rest of my lines on there so that I knew where to cut. So after doing all of my measurements on the face, all I then do is transfer the edge so that when I'm sawing I know exactly where to be cutting. So I do that by just transferring the edge using that angle and making sure that my lines are nice and straight. The next part made me feel a little bit sick. I had to do some hand carpentry. So I reached for my hand saw. I'm not sure if this is a left-handed or a right-handed one because it doesn't seem to be working very well. Maybe that's just me. So all I do is I try to keep the saw as level as possible and cut to the depth I've got marked. Now this is never going to be perfect and I'm not using the world's best saw, granted. But once I've done that, I then have to use my chisels, which I can find because they're on the wall, in the place that I made for them, where they should be. Now I know with chiselling you're supposed to work a little bit at a time, but I decided to just hammer out massive chunks. Yes, this is the wrong thing to do. No, it's not going to be perfect. However, this really isn't a perfect kind of project. If you want to watch pure chisel work, Matt Eastley on YouTube is just unbelievable. The things that guy can do with hand tools is amazing. Check him out, but I'm not him. So after hammering out a good chunk of it, I then turn it over, unclamp it, and just kind of clean it up a little bit. It's fit for my purpose. And here you can see the finished product. So that piece of wood that's going to hold the clamp slots nicely, and in fact very nicely. I have to give it a little tappy tap and I'm pretty sure this thing would hold without glue, but obviously I am going to glue it. The clamps will hang just like that. There's enough space for it to go against the wall. I'm fairly happy with myself. Quick sand and then we'll put it all together. I want to screw this in from the back because we're working with angles and it's not going to look pretty if I screw it in from the front. So it looks like it's held in place pretty well, but that was just some super glue and activator. Once it's tacked in place, by the way, that's certainly not strong enough to hold your clamps, so don't just use that. I then flip the board over, same drill as before, countersink those holes, put some screws through, nice and solid. The bigger clamps I've got have a bigger foot, bigger metally bit, they won't fit on that clamp rack that I've just made. But I've got a simple solution from them, and I'm going to use the scraps that I've got left over from making those angled pieces. So all I do is I get the wedges, same trick as before, bit of super glue, bit of activator, I've drawn a level line on there, and then I'm going to tack those on. Once I've tacked them on, I'll flip the board over, put some screws through, make sure they're nice and strong. I was feeling fairly confident at this point. I hadn't actually tried anything yet, but I thought this is going to hang on the wall, the clamps are going to look pretty and everything will start to come together. So, reached for my clamps and started hanging them up. And I've got to say, I'm quite pleased with the way this looks in the background. Yes, that wall is nearly the same colour, but I don't know, I'll get over it someday, I'm sure. Anyway, have a look, see what this looks like. Obviously I've got a load of other clamps that I need to figure out storage for, but I thought I've got a little bit of a space here. Quick win, those little corner clamps that I'm probably never going to use, at least I'll have a space for them, and I thought, what's the easiest way to hang them up? They've got holes in, I'll just hammer some nails in. What could be simpler than that? Absolute foolproof plan. I don't know why I say these things to myself. Anyway, after taking those useless nails out, I decided to go for a nearly as simple option. All I'm going to do is I'm going to drill through with a 6mm bit, put in some 6mm dowels, and I'm just going to super glue them in place, and then that should hold everything on. And I don't know why I want to even bother with this, because I'll probably never use those clamps ever. I suppose it does fill a space and it gives me somewhere to put those clamps. And it's quite nice to have a bit of colour on the wall, you know, because I've painted the wall the colour of breeze blocks that it already was. I've got a place for things, and this is most unusual. I've got things to hang. I've got places to put my founded saw. I've got a place to put my square. And now I've got a place to put my clamps. Except I haven't finished yet. I'm fully aware that this video is going to be very, very long by the amount of mistakes I've filmed today. I'm going to break this into two parts, two shorter videos. So keep tuned, watch out for the next video where I'll try and figure out the other clamps. But I think it should be easier. Famous last words? Peace. Still hate you.